Don't you think the Democrat Party has a responsibility, indeed an obligation, to nominate somebody who knows how to walk, doesn't bump into the walls, can complete sentences? Don't you think they have an obligation to nominate somebody for president who spends most of his time on the job rather than 40% on vacation and part of the other 60% in his basement? Don't you think the Democrat Party has a responsibility to nominate somebody who will engage even with a friendly media on a regular basis, which is supposed to help the American people know what's going on in the country? Don't you think the Democrat Party has a responsibility to nominate somebody who is going to secure the border rather than promote sex slavery, child slavery, modern-day slavery like we've never seen on our southern border? Who will help stop fentanyl and other killer toxic drugs from coming into our country and killing our people? Don't you think the Democrat Party has an obligation to nominate somebody for president who isn't providing aid and comfort to our enemies, providing them with funds, rearming them, and I'm speaking in particular of Iran and terrorist organizations like Hamas and Hezbollah and the Houthis? Don't you think the Democrat Party has a responsibility to the American people, period? I was looking at the New York Times the other day, and, you know, they have their front cover and their articles. What a sinister operation that is. What a complete disaster. If you love the country, if you hate the country, it's your Bible. And there was a column on the right, going all the way down the page, more time than they ever provided on covering the Holocaust and the slaughter of the Jews in the 1940s. And there it was, into the second paragraph, another lecture on how Donald Trump and the Republicans are really at risk of losing, as if the New York Times is upset about that, because they may not appeal to the moderates and so forth. And this is what you're going to keep hearing. Why? Because the tactic right now is the same tactic that they used against Reagan, as I explained last night. The tactic is to try and scare off moderate voters, to try and scare off so-called independents or even conservative Democrats, and to create the phony impression and their own reality that Trump can't win. Now, Trump may win, he may lose, but I'd rather bet on Trump. Now, let me give you an example of what I'm talking about. It's funny how Trump is a radical and MAGA's radical. They, in the past, as I've told you, they called Goldwater Hitler. They called Nixon Hitler. They called George W. Hitler. Every Ronald Reagan Hitler. Trump is Hitler. It's the same game plan. Why? Because their policies suck. They don't want to take credit for what they're doing to the country with their centralized government, with their socialist economics, with their Marxist classrooms and everything. And they think that they're going to win on one big issue. Does anyone know what that big issue is? Abortion. They're abortion obsessed. And so, even though we have, unlike at any time since after the Civil War, slavery on our southern border under another Democrat. Sex slavery, child slavery, slavery is slavery. And of course, the Democrats, as the Democrats before, they don't really want to talk about it. But that's what's going on the southern border. It's not immigration, it's mayhem, it's anarchy, it's inhumanity, it's rape. That's Biden's southern border, so they can't talk about that. We've got inflation through the roof. People are having difficulty making ends meet. And it's serious. And you go into grocery stores and you go through the fast food restaurants. I do all this stuff. You go to a diner, you do all these things, you can see the prices. And you have to ask yourself, how can somebody who's on a fixed income, or somebody earning minimum wage, or somebody who's just poor, or middle lower class, how do they survive? And also, fuel prices, utility prices, rent prices, house prices, through the roof. You've got crime everywhere. There's open season on any business and store in our major metropolitan areas. The Soros prosecutors aren't going to charge them. They've made that clear. Open season. They're under attack in these Democrat cities with these Democrat city councils who undermine local law enforcement because people don't want to join local law enforcement anymore, and they can't keep honorable men and women in law enforcement anymore. Who the hell would want to? Military recruitment is way down because of what they've done to our military with the wokeness and the idiot policies that they're putting in place, with the brilliant commander-in-chief and the often AWOL Secretary of Defense. We have a volunteer military, and our numbers are way down, very dangerous to our national security. China's on the march. Iran is on the march. We're funding Iran. Iran is funding China with our money. Russia's on the move. Iran is funding Russia with our money. But the Democrats want to talk about abortion. Okay. Certainly not going to spend the whole show on abortion, but I have a challenge with them, number one, and then I want to get to my point. Abortion is a choice. Okay. That which is being aborted is not a human being. Really? Okay, no science there. And besides, we want it to be safe. Okay. If it's all these things, if it's a choice, if it's safe, and it's not a baby, then show us. There's not a single news operation in America, whether it's at PBS, whether it's the networks, cable, whatever, who would ever think about showing you partial birth abortion on TV. They'll show you almost anything else. Not one. Well, show us what happens in the 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th month in an abortion. Show us. It's a civil rights issue. There's a lot of debate about it. We talk about it, may even see drawings, but we never see it. So if abortion is the big issue for the Democrats, and if, as we're told, it results in all these women from the suburbs and elsewhere voting Democrat, then what's the problem? Show us. Got video? Video it. We want to see. I want the American people to see. And you know why they won't? Because it'll completely change the debate. All of a sudden, it's not a choice. All of a sudden, it is a human being. All of a sudden, it's not so safe, especially for the human being. Doesn't mean people won't have their own beliefs and want to do whatever they want to do, but at least let's see it. Now, I want to say one other thing. I decided right before this show, since the Dobbs decision, which is a constitutionally correct decision, which simply says, states, you decide on your abortion rules. That's not a federal constitutional issue. That's not a federal Supreme Court issue where a majority of lawyers in black robes get to decide for the entirety of the country. Okay, so let's take a look. Now I'm going to break some news to you that hasn't been broken anywhere else. Just listen to me. So I said to my producer, can you get me the figures on abortion for 2020 and the latest figures, which are 2023? The Dobbs decision was in the middle of that, but 2023 is after the Dobbs decision and 2020 is before the Dobbs decision. And this is the way these data are gathered by a very left-wing group called the Guttmacher Institute, which says of itself they're a leading research and policy organization committed to advancing sexual and reproductive health and rights worldwide. I would include abortion. The Institute has a long history of tracking abortion incidents in the United States and globally. Every 3 years since 1974, hence 2020, 2023. The Guttmacher Institute has conducted the abortion provider census of all known facilities providing abortion in the United States to collect information about service provision, including total number of abortions. So what did they find? Well, they found in 2020, before the Supreme Court's Dobbs decision, in the United States, there is approximately 77,500 abortions performed every month. Every month. Well, what about 2023? Well, they only had information for the first 10 months. So it's easy to extrapolate. That's a pretty good number. And so for 2023, after the Dobbs decision, the monthly abortion rate was 87,800. About a 12% increase over 2020 before the Dobbs decision. So let me make this clear. This whole issue about women being unable to get abortions, where they'll find an anecdotal case here and there, notice they don't find hundreds of cases, thousands of cases, 10,000 cases, but they want you to think that's what's going on. That's not what's going on. This is a liberal organization that tracks this number better than anybody else. They're known in the left. That's why I asked that we look at them and look at their numbers. And their numbers show that in 2020, there were 77,500 on average abortions per month. 2020. And there's 87,800 on average abortions every month in 2023 after the Dobbs decision. And the Democrats are still going to try and convince you that women are unable to get abortions. Hardly. Women are able to get, as a group, in the aggregate, more abortions than ever before. I don't happen to think that's great. But the Democrats, they should at least tell the truth. They're going to run on abortion? Pretty sick, given everything that's going on in this country, and given the fact that abortions are, frankly, ubiquitous in America.
Want to see more Mark Levin? Go to levintv.com and subscribe now.